This is a first mini episode of my mini podcast. This is Diva, and today I'm going to be I'm Abby, and I'm 16, and I go by she, her, and my favorite genre right now is probably tragedy, realistic tragedy. I'm not sure. And we have our guest.
Hello.
Introduce yourself.
My name is Alex. I'm 18. My pronouns are she, her. My favorite genre is probably, I don't know, actually. Probably like history. I don't know. I don't know what my favorite genre is.
Well, what's the latest book you're reading?
Is nonfiction a genre? Does that count? Because I don't know what not.
You kind of just read everything life.
I just read.
And I read everything that's not life.
I read whatever I find interesting, which sometimes is fiction or poetry, but most of the time it's nonfiction.
The most recent book, super random, I read was about a young woman, probably around my age, pregnant, and got sent to wilderness camp, and her parents didn't know the whole time until she was dealing with trying to decide to have an abortion or not. And her best friend was the one that was pressuring her to keep the baby. It was actually kind of sad.
The most recent book I read, which I'm not quite done with yet, quite done with yet, is about transgender history in the United States. It's pretty interesting. Learned a lot about the gay and transgender movements and the ways that they intercepted and branched apart from each other in the early days of those movements. But I haven't read very far into it yet. Okay,
well, let's start with, or I keep saying let's start. Let's continue with, where was your first memory of reading, as a little baby?
Well, growing up, my dad would always read me to sleep, and my first memories of reading are not me reading, but other people reading to me. Particularly my dad. Before I would go to sleep, he would always read me fiction books, and my sister would. I would sleep in her room sometimes, and my dad would read to me, and I would lay on the lower half of her bed because she had a little pull out area. And my dad would read to us, and my sister would fall asleep, and then I'd always be awake, and we'd talk about the books afterwards, or the chapters that we read. And I also remember lots of poetry readings and things of that nature going on at my house all the time when I was little. So I'd just kind of come out and see what was going on. I had no idea what they were talking about. I definitely interpreted a lot of metaphors in the poems as literal things that happen.
We had very different, I guess I was always around children, reading, my cousins.
No,
honestly, I was probably...
Yeah, I was never around
children.
Were
a little slow, so I would always be the one kind of initiating reading and stuff. My grandma would always read to me too, before bed. We do our little prayers, because little Hispanics. And we do our nightly prayers, and then she would read me one of my favorite was always Dr. Seuss. I always just rhyming schemes and patterns. I think that's really why I like poetry a lot today. It's because that was some of the first books I read.
What were you talking about before? You were talking about your cousins.
I was talking about how I first started reading. I would spend a lot of time at my grandma's house.
Okay, so as we grew up, how did reading help us to develop our
personalities?
Yeah.
Honestly, I just had a lot of, I'm gonna say I had a huge ego when I was little. I just thought I was better than everyone, and I would educationally I held myself higher. So I would always be reading. I think so. My dad would always encourage me to read and just be more literate, and so I'd read all the time at home and at school. There was that competitive edge from AR points. like starting in second grade, I was already like, I have to be the best of the best, you know? The ones I would always milk for AR points were Diary of a Wimpy Kid. Because there's just so many.
I also read Diary of a Wimpy Kid.
That was actually the first chapter book I ever read.
Yeah. Okay. Well, we're not talking about... Are we? No, we're not even talking about
what?
Our next transition point is our realization that we were different.
Well, I guess, like, I would just read, and it was something that was, like, kind of cool in elementary. Like, I was a part of the book club, and, like, I was a little bit of a nerd. But then when I got to middle school, like, everyone kind of became mean. I feel like things changed. Yeah, I just was different than everyone else. I never really fit anywhere, like, in with people. I would read a lot to kill the time. And that's when I really started getting into, like, nonfiction and just being transported to these other worlds and finding distraction every day. Some of my favorite books were probably The Pretty Little Liars around this time, like really just dramatic stories that would make me forget about everything.
Diary of a Wimpy Kid.
No, not really Diary of a Wimpy Kid.
The most dramatic story.
No, that was like elementary. That was like, I said that was the first chapter book I ever read.
No, that was the most dramatic story you've ever read.
The most like stomach churning tragedy I've ever seen.
Yeah, when Roderick went on a murderous rampage.
Oh my god. Oh no. Okay, what about you?
When I was younger, like probably going into middle school, because I kind of stopped reading books so much around middle school. But definitely I was pretty lonely in elementary school. Like, I had friends and everybody knew me because my nickname was Cactus, and so everybody thought I was unique. I don't know. I don't really know what they thought I was, but I was something. I was a plant. And yeah, reading was definitely a way for me to feel like I had like friends and stuff. And it was cool, especially the Diary of a Wimpy Kid books were pretty fun to read because it was just like, I don't know, I got to, if you're lonely and you're a child, it's nice to read those books because it makes you feel like you're doing something. But yeah, once I got to middle school, I stopped reading as much, and I definitely would say that didn't necessarily help me. And I started to have a lot of mental health struggles around middle school that definitely would have been helped a little bit if I had some more knowledge.
Just in general. Genuinely, there's no meat here. We're picking at scraps. Neither of us remember our childhoods.
I don't even remember my childhood.
Just gonna be for real.
There wasn't that many poetry readings.
Middle school was such a horrible time. I only remember like half of it. My next point is that I joined Battle of the Books. That literally made me friends. Reading books was like the one way I made friends. Kind of nerdy. It was actually the most boring club ever. But I met people, and that helped me kind of get back into things, social things. After middle school, I kind of stopped reading for a little bit my freshman year. I got really depressed. I was never diagnosed, but I was really sad all the time, independent on other people for happiness and stuff. That really wasn't good. And I would read a lot of books, just like sad books about being alone. And like there was this one book I read, I can't remember the title of it, but it was about an apocalypse type situation where all the water would poison everyone. And so this young girl, her entire family dies, and she's figuring out how to survive the apocalypse on her own. And it felt a lot just like being alone all the time. And that's kind of how I felt. Even though I had people in my life, I never felt important at the time.
When I started high school, I still really wasn't into reading like at all. And my freshman year just also happened to be the COVID year. So I was pretty um I was definitely more into playing video games and watching videos and stuff. Reading just seemed kind of like a waste of time for me. Like I could be doing something so much more stimulating. But um, as I got older, I started to read more, and I discovered that reading is actually pretty great. And I definitely got a lot more from it than just the stories that I would read, because reading helps you to articulate your words better. It helps you to understand your thoughts better, even to be able to write better, to put your thoughts onto paper so much better. And as I started to read more nonfiction, I got more interested in the things that were going on in the world that I couldn't necessarily just watch a video on. There's only so much context you can get from watching a video. But reading books really helps you to gain a more nuanced understanding of the world. And as I got as I got even older, I
As I keep getting older and older.
kept aging throughout high school. My senior year, I got really into books about LGBTQ history, and not just history, but current day LGBTQ struggles across the world, and also lots of feminist literature. And I started to kind of reading helped me to come more into my political identity, which is important considering I'm trans. It's important that I have a strong and nuanced understanding of politics, because I am a walking political issue. So, yeah.
Yeah, every time you talk about like books you read, I'm honestly so impressed, because I can never just get myself to read a book about life. For me, it's just like it's like regurgitating just a bunch of sadness to me. And I usually read books to read about other people's sadness, to distract from my from my sadness, or just my life.
I guess.
But there was this one nonfiction book I read when I was probably in 7th grade that changed my perspective on just like myself and how I interpreted just like my existence. Because around middle school was when I was like figuring out I was queer and stuff. And there's this one book I read called "This Book Is Gay," and like it's something called that, and it's just about like discovering yourself at a young age and navigating your identity, like as a queer person. I remember like bits and pieces of it, and it just really helped me figure out who I was at the time. And it was really nice to just read about other people who had gone through similar things and like how they dealt with it.
I thought that book was written by a completely different person. I thought it was written by Dan Howell, or whatever his name is.
What? No, it's by Juno Dawson.
Yeah, I looked it up. I thought it was by Dan from Dan and Phil. I don't know why.
Oh my
I don't know what book, because I swear there's a Dan and Phil book.
wrote a great youth LGBTQ book that changed lives.
Yeah. Well, they wrote a book,
They
right?
were like...
The Amazing Book is Not on Fire. It's definitely not.
I don't think that's a LGBTQ book. Okay.
Well. Yeah, and it was before they were even out, too.
Yeah, they've only been out a couple months, or like a year or two.
Yeah, it's definitely been more than a couple of months.
Yeah, that's why I jumped from that to a year or two. I knew I was wrong. Okay, so honestly, when we started dating again, for context, we've broken up, but When we started dating again, you really got me into reading more. Just because when you quit social media, you started picking up hobbies and stuff.
I wouldn't say I was picking up hobbies so much as I had hobbies and social media took them away from me because it was all I cared about. But yeah.
It consumed me.
But also, I don't know if it was so much social media as much as my time that was the bigger reason I didn't do all those hobbies. But yeah, reading.
That's what I was discussing with like all my classmates. There's just my one friend Amanda who's in this class conveniently. Her project is based on like how she has no time to consume reading because it's just not a fast enough media.
That's interesting.
Like, because she's memorials drum major and like she takes all these college classes with me, which like they're very time consuming, I will admit. But I still find time to do it, which maybe I'm just a fast reader, but also maybe it's my priority to read because it's something I enjoy.
Sometimes with me being more into nonfiction, I find it harder to just like sit down and read those books sometimes because I have to be in the mood to want to learn about all that stuff. And sometimes I just don't want to think that hard, which, generally doesn't go hand in hand with reading so much. But I do find in those moments that I don't want to think so hard that fiction helps me to escape a lot more than nonfiction does. I will say that.
I mean, I enjoy
random.
nonfiction where it's more of a story perspective, like that one that we read on the bus to DCI. That one, I also because of pictures. I'm gonna be honest, I really love picture books.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if that was a story perspective.
Well, it's still.
It's
no, it wasn't even story. I just like the visual aspect.
Yeah, I can see that. I mean,
what was it called?
You.
Oh, bless. Oh my god. Bless you.
The babies. Gender, a graphic guide.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, that book's pretty good. I really like that book. It makes sense for what it's describing because gender is such a it's not an easy thing to describe without showing a visual representation because gender is very much expressed both visually and in a whole host of ways. Everybody is expressing gender in some way and all the time, and
in a unique way. Every single drawing in that it was very unique.
Yeah, because humans.
I really liked it.
It's a cool book.
I liked it because it made me think without overwhelming my brain, because I could like visualize everything. I feel like when I read a lot of nonfiction, I can get confused and lost because it's just like so much fact and words, and there's no like guide. It's just like here. Now piece it together.
Yeah, I mean, in the book I was reading, The Pink Line, that book was about queer people all around the world and their different identities and their different lives and the ways that they're treated by their governments and their communities. But one thing that book had that kind of helped me out was that it had a guide to each of the people or each of the, I guess, I don't want to say characters because it's nonfiction. So I'll say people. Yeah, each of the people that were described in each chapter, they were labeled. So it was like, okay, this person means this in relation to whoever we're interviewing or whatever, or in relation to the community or whatever. And so it helped me to kind of that book definitely was more focused. I think nonfiction does kind of sometimes end up being word stew, word sludge, where it's just like, what am I looking at? Like, there's so many words in this.
Yeah.
I can't really look at this and come up with a clear picture of what I'm supposed to gain from this. But that book definitely was written in more of in a way that I think would bring in a lot of people who aren't so much into nonfiction because of that.
I mean, the most nonfiction reading I do is probably from my history course right now. My professor, he loves to provide like excerpts of like writings from, right now we're mainly focusing on like the colonization of the Spanish and the Native Americans and stuff, and just like the cultural assimilation that they went through because of the colonization. And some of my favorite readings have been like excerpts of like the Native Americans accounts of what happened, or historians like gathering accounts and then regurgitating the information that they've like gathered into one like cohesive paragraph.
A big part of why I started reading so many nonfiction books my senior year was because I realized that I had never learned anything about LGBTQ history in any of the history classes I had taken, and that's because a lot of those textbooks, especially here in Texas, that are standardized across the state, often, well, and by often I mean all the time, just tell the winner's perspective. They tell the American version of events, but the history of America is so much more nuanced than those history books would ever lead you to believe. And there are struggles that have been struggles for hundreds of years that we pretend aren't still struggles, but no, they are.
That's what I've been thinking about a lot, because right now, on Thursday, we read this excerpt about how the Spanish would persecute women for being witches, and specifically, there were a lot of cases in history where they would persecute women over witchcraft because they made hot chocolate, and they would say that they put spells in the drinks over the Spanish men. But making hot chocolate was a traditional practice at this point. It had been a part of the Native American, like Spanish, this new culture. As it was developing, Spanish women would take the Native American practice of creating like the chocolate drink, and they would do it for their Spanish husbands. But because it had derived from Native American culture, it was seen like with stigma. And so they would say that they would cast these spells and then persecute them for like really stupid reasons, like reasons it was the men's fault. And they would just kill them over this. Like, there was this one woman who would literally, she was persecuted for putting a spell in the chocolate so her husband wouldn't beat her anymore. Because out of like desperation, she believed in this magic. But the Spanish persecutors knew that magic isn't real. Like, it was just to kill them.
Yeah, I think
into like a sign of power.
Yeah, I think a big part, a big thing that makes literacy so important today is that in schools we're often given these very, we're given accounts of history from a very one-sided perspective, and it can lead people to believe things, to believe perhaps that things like witchcraft, it could lead people to believe that witchcraft wasn't an excuse for them to just control women back then, like that and I think that's kind of a thing that reading can help you to develop more views on. Like for example, let's say you've never read about any sort of LGBTQ history, and you're supposed to make an opinion on trans people. You're not trans, you're a straight cis person, and you're supposed to make an opinion on trans people when you haven't ever learned anything about the fact that trans people have existed forever. You know, if you read a book about trans people, you would learn that trans people aren't a new part of society. Like it is often said online, people often say that trans is just a new trend. People say that. But if you're
Yeah.
literate and you're able to read and actually go back or to just read books about about the history of these people that you have to make political decisions on, then you would actually learn that, in fact, trans people have been around forever, just like gay people, just like all people across the LGBTQ spectrum, because it's just a thing you feel. It's just a part of you. It's not a plague.
Yeah.
Yeah, but that I think that's an important thing about literacy, is that there are a lot of things that you'll be taught that aren't necessarily true, or aren't not necessarily true, but things that aren't nuanced enough to give you a proper understanding of the world, and can cause you to make misinformed opinions.
Yeah, I feel like, especially as a high school student, being being more, I'm gonna say, like, leftist and liberal in Texas is really difficult, because you're just angered all the time, because a lot of your classmates just regurgitate what their parents have told them. Like, I can tell none of these people have ever opened a book in their life and tried to learn about the history of LGBTQ to form an opinion on it. All they've been taught is, like, Catholic Church thinks it's bad to be gay, and so I think it's bad to be gay, and I think it's gross. You know?
Yeah.
And I think, and I have, at my school, like, literally a few days ago, my friend gets asked out and has to reject this guy like 3 different times, and her girlfriend is literally right next to her. And when she finally says, like, no, I'm seeing someone, and he goes, oh, this doesn't matter, like, is it serious? And she literally goes, like, this is my girlfriend next to me, like, you're asking me out and my girlfriend is here. And then he just made, like, the most disgusted face, and it makes me realize, like, how just, like, how much bigotry there is. And, like, there's no, like, independent thought around me. It's a very much, like, mass way of thinking. Like, everyone around me thinks this way, so I have to act this certain way.
Yeah, fun fact, if you read, you'll actually learn everything that your parents ever told you is wrong. just saying that to anyone who watches this.
My professor, I'm pretty sure she knows by now.
Yeah. If you live here in the valley, and your parents are religious and you read, you might realize some things.
Your worldview will very much expand. It'll be like unlocking a third eye.
Yeah, you'll unlock the new part of the map, and you'll get to do all the quests over there too. You'll unlock the new tower. Then you can get another life for your Sheikah slate, and then you can and then you can glide better, and then you can also increase your stamina.
Yeah, reading boosts your stats.
Reading boosts your stats, guys.
You get muscle stats, brain stats.
Oh yeah, big brain stats.
Scientifically, if you read, you will become 2 times bigger, gain 50% more
muscle mass,
testosterone or estrogen,
muscle mass,
per your choice.
Muscle mass,
and just big muscle mass.
So much big muscles.
Okay, well, see, only good things come from reading is all we're getting at.
Only good things. So much muscle mass.
I feel like reading just in general. Okay. I just think reading has always been such a light in my life. Like, it's always brought me happiness and just good things overall. Even if it's like a really sad book. But it reminds me that, hey, my life isn't this sad.
Yep. At least I'm not a dog.
At least I'm not in a school shooting right now.
Yep.
I talked about that in my class. Shout out to my professor. She was there. I talked about how I like read tragedy and stuff, and then they were like, give us an example, and I was like, school shooting, because that was the one I had read most recently, and it got really awkward really fast.
If I was English class, the only thing I read would be about gay people and feminists and poetry about America, because I actually love America.
Oh wow.
I'm actually proud American.
Well, as a very proud American who watches American Dad every day.
As an American dad.
Okay. I think this is a good point to wrap up.
Yeah, I think so too. Do you even know how to edit this?
No, I do. I'm just gonna actually.
I'm just gonna edit as.
We can discuss this off camera.
Okay. Well.
But thank you for coming on my podcast, my brand new podcast.
Yeah, it was great. Thanks for having me.
And today we figured out who this diva is. We went into who you are.
Yeah, man.
I'm
gay. And I like to read.
And I'm gay. And
Women like us are rare.
There's definitely not many women.
Anyways.
It's not many.
So
okay.
Thank you for having me on your podcast, and let me know if you do another one. I enjoyed this one.
Maybe we can do a better one.
and next time we'll talk about the role of
cheese and how it shaped us.
How cheese
has been a very big role in my life.
We're gonna talk about charcuterie boards, and we're gonna have we're gonna have charcuterie boards, and it's just gonna be a grand old time.
Grand old cheesy melty time.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I'll stretch this cheese later.
I will.
See you.
Bye.